Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the SOMM TV Podcast. My name is Jason Wise, the maker of these films and the person whose voice I'm going to torment you with for the next hour. Today's a fun one. I got together with Laura Manick Fiorvanti, who is a master sommelier and a very good friend of mine, and we made a decision to count down our top 5 wines we have had in our careers. This one was a lot of fun to hear the stories and everything, so that's coming up, and man, this podcast could have been 5 hours long, so we did our best to keep it as streamlined as possible, because something we both are pretty passionate about are wines that changed our lives. But before I do that, let's talk about SOMM TV for a second. So sommtv.com, if you're not a member or interested in being a member. Right now we have a charter membership going for at least a little while longer. It's $74.99 for the year. And that gets you access to all the content we have up. We have lots of stuff coming weekly. Right now I'm uploading 2 more episodes of the Blind Tasting Sessions, which is a show we have that sort of puts people at a table and makes them blind taste against each other. We have Matt Kaner from Bar Covell and Christy Norman, who is the head sommelier at Spago in Beverly Hills. I also have Will Blackman, who's an NFL return specialist who blind tastes with Laura Fiorvanti. These are hilarious. They should be up. Hopefully, when you're listening to this, they're up. We also have a couple more episodes of Verticals coming. I believe they will be Schramsberg and Chapelet, which are, well, I'll let the episodes speak for themselves. Very excited for you guys to see those. We have a whole new series called Legends of the Vine, which is going to have the first 3 episodes, Becky Wasserman, Aubert de Villaine over at Domaine Romani-Conti, and Maria Lopez at Lopez De Heredia. And that is these are very special. We've been sitting on these for a while, and I'm so excited to hear what you guys think. We're also finishing up our multi-part series that will retake Ian through the Master Sommelier exam, and it's a very different look than I think you've been given before. So that should be up pretty soon. It's called The Exam. We also have our first master experience coming. I'm hoping to have that up by the end of this week, so you should be able to. Some of you, it's already up. The others, if you're listening to this right away, we are working very hard. It's a champagne masterclass that is told in a very unique style. I don't think you've ever seen anything like this. So that's going to be up as well. Everything, we are working our tails off to assemble a very large library of content for you guys. Oh, also our Wine 101 education series starts very, very soon up on SOMM TV. And we'll be covering some live events. There's a lot of news coming up. I'm not allowed to talk about some of it. So anywho, without further ado, here is my conversation with Laura Manick, counting down our top 5 wines of our career. Laura, we are in Los Angeles.
We are.
Flew you out here. Wait, open that.
All right, so we're opening 1980, Lopez De Heredia, Vina Tondonia. It's going to be fun.
1980 is my birth year, and this is how I conned Laura into doing a podcast with me, is to open up a bottle of wine we both feel very, very, very...
passionate about?
Yeah, passionate about. It's a good one. So here's the thing. We're going to count down, what would we say, our 5 favorite wines? What are the rules for this? Because I think this is a really difficult thing to define.
Well, I wouldn't say it's really favorite wines, because these are wines that could change tomorrow. Like, I think it's like, for me, I picked the wines that I could remember as being... like, there's a memory behind them. There's a story. There's a place. There's a feeling I had when I had them.
You got laid.
Yeah, maybe. In some cases, yes. I think it's just like, it's more than just the bottles, because we've had so many great bottles that would be like impossible to choose. So for me, they're just moments in time that I happen to be drinking these wines. So they might not even be as interesting as yours. I don't know.
Well, obnoxiously, I've made these movies, and so I think a fair amount of these are gonna be ones people can remember.
Great.
And there's one true thing with all the bottles you see on any of the movies we make. I drank them all. So
that's great.
So anyways, yeah. So okay, so before we do that though, as you open this wine that we will drink, pardon for the sound in the background of that, you came out to LA.
I did.
We just filmed quite a bit with you. 3 very, very, very intense days for SOMM TV.
Yeah, it was nonstop, which I appreciate, because we have to make the most of my time here. And I had a lot of fun, but yeah, I'm pretty tired. I'm not gonna lie.
All right, so you came in for the first time. The first day we filmed, God, what did we film the first day?
First day we did that blind tasting, which was really fun. I don't know how I agreed to be roped into just getting off a plane from New York, running from the airport right directly to Bar Covell, and then I let you film me blind tasting, which was, it was fun. It was, it's one of those things you're always a little bit nervous, like, what if I don't get the wine right? But I thought it was fun, and I was tasting with Will Blackman.
Well, yeah, NFL return specialist.
Yeah.
Really.
NFL wine guy. That's his handle these days. And
Yeah, he'll
he's a
appreciate
really
that.
cool guy.
Well, that'll be up on SOMM TV, so that's good. And then the next day we did this champagne masterclass, which is like a kind of cross between like stand-up comedy and a masterclass and a TED Talk and a feature-length documentary that goes into champagne. And this is something we've been, Christina, myself, everybody on our team has been talking for years about how do you do education and make it fun, but not skimp on what people need to know. And we thought very much about this format, and you're the first one, so.
Again, I have no idea. I think I was drunk when you called me and you were like, do you want to do this, this, and that? And I was like, sure. But yeah, I was the first one, so it was a little nerve-wracking, but I feel like it came out good.
Oh
I
my
hope
God,
so.
I am so excited about this. I have so much work to do on it because we're going to try to pump it out in like, what, a week and a half, 2 weeks. So this thing's going to
I can't wait to see it.
Oh my God, this is going to be great. So anyways, that'll be up on SOMM TV. That's enough plugs.
This cork is great. Look at this cork.
All right, so looking at a 1980 Lopez De Heredia red
Perfect.
cork. All right, pour this, then let's talk. So I think here's what we do. I doubt we have the same wines on our list. It's very unlikely. And we should say again, if you and I were to count down our top 5 wines again tomorrow, we would probably have different wines.
I think so. Yeah.
Or at least they would change in order and in a number of ways. Is that wine okay?
Oh, I don't know, but it looks really good.
This is my birth year, so this is a pretty special.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's
so good.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, do you want to start with? Let's start with our number 5, and we're going to count up and kind of talk about this. And I hope everybody listening has to understand this is kind of a flex podcast. We're not trying to say, "Ooh, look how effing cool I am that I drank all these old wines." But a lot of these are going to be those kind of wines. So I want to apologize straight up that.
We're not really bragging. We're just sharing some things.
Oh, no, we are. No.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's some of the wines are, to me, they're a little bit bragging, like, how'd you get that? I can't believe you drank that. And others are just like how I fell in love with wine. So I guess I'll start with how I fell in love with wine, especially white wine, because a lot of my wines on the list are...
Well, how many on your list are white? How many are red?
Well, I have a 6th, so I'm going to perhaps throw one out, but I have a champagne, 3 whites, and a red on my original list.
Okay, I didn't know we were on the 60. We said 5.
Well, I'm going to toss one as we go. I'm going to say, should I pick that one or should I pick this one? I'm kind of like, I'm just rolling with it.
All right. See, I personally tend to drink a lot more white than red, and I often would say I enjoy white more than red on an overall scale. But I have 1 red, 2 reds, 3 reds. Okay, so 3 reds, a fortified wine, and a rosé. I have no whites on this list.
Good, we're a good pair. We balance each other.
Oh man, wacky. Okay, let's start with your number 5. Are there any more pretext we have to give?
I don't think so. We'll just kind of go with it.
We understand this is kind of douchey to go.
We're sorry. Not sorry.
It's not like necessarily the greatest wines or the most like,
They're not. It's about the wine, where you were, what you drank, who you were with, all that stuff.
Okay, all right. What's your number 5?
Mine was 1991 Kalin Cellars Semillon. Kalin Cellars. It's a winery in Livermore Valley. And I'll tell you the story because...
Wait, tell people where Livermore is, because this isn't Napa, this isn't Santa Barbara.
No, I mean, this is California, but it's not one of the main regions of California. So you're in Livermore Valley, just northeast of San Francisco. And this particular producer, I don't know that many other producers in the Livermore Valley. So Kalin Cellars is husband and wife team. They're the only 2 people that ever touch the wine, make the wine. Terry Layton is, he did like DNA gene analysis, something along those lines. And before he started making wine, I remember because there was this restaurant in New York when you were waiting tables and working in restaurants, when I still went out late night, which by the way, I'm in bed at like 9:30 most nights. But at that time, there was Blue Ribbon. There's like this place where every sommelier, every server, bartender hung out, and they had really good food late night. So it's like a New York institution. But the thing about it is they always had this really great wine list where you could just go in after work, industry pricing. And I didn't really know that much about wine at the time. I probably was barely 21. I went in late night one night, and I was like, all right, I get wine. I really like it. I hope to study it sometime. But I didn't really understand how good white wine could be. And then I just like randomly picked this bottle of 91 Kaolin, and it was like life-changing. It was just like incredible. I remember, so probably that was like 2002. So first of all, I was like, how is it that this is the current release of 1991, was a current release in 2002. And that was pretty cool. And then really, like, what is this? You know, we know Semillon, it's a grape that goes into Bordeaux, and they grow some in Australia. But to think that it could be grown in California and it could age, I was just curious.
How old are you at this point?
I mean, probably, I'm saying I was 21, but I doubt I was, because I actually knew a little bit about wine at 21, so probably like 19 or 20.
Okay,
Not that it matters, because, you know, we all drank
I never drank
wine
until I was 21. No,
I know you're a rule follower.
My ID said I was 21, for sure.
Yeah. So I just remember opening this bottle of wine, and it was intense and golden in color, not oxidized at all, which is the thing about Kaolin cellars. Even now, the current release is still like in early 2000s. And the wines were golden in color and golden in flavor, but not at all like oxidized. And I don't know, what was it about it that still, you know, almost 20 years later,
I'm so fascinated.
I remember.
You picked a wine from Livermore, California.
I
on
know.
your list. This is great.
But it made me...
It's a legendary winery too.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. I mean, and then years later, when I met Terry. I was opening in this hotel in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I met Terry, and I was almost like starstruck. Like, your bottle of wine is the first bottle of wine I've ever said, aha, like that aha moment. I get it. And you know, he was just like this beautiful, even his older man at the time, and selling wine, and just, I don't know, there's something about that memory of finally getting it that made me feel like I'm always going to be a fan of Kaolin cellars.
Oh, interesting. This is great.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
Right.
I wonder how that wine's tasting today, like that vintage.
99 Kaolin?
Well, not 99, 91 at the
91,
time.
oh boy. If anyone's listening and knows it has a 91 Kaolin
like bring it to Cork Buzz.
Bring it to Cork Buzz, and you'll probably
And I'll trade you something great.
Oh, love this. Okay.
So what about you? What's your number 5?
Number 5 is, all right, so I couldn't tell the vintage on this until recently because this is an inadvertent plug for SOMM TV, but I went to Lopez De Heredia with my crew, and we did some filming. And I've been sitting on this footage for quite a long time, and you helped me finish this. You were part here. We have something coming out, an episode about Lopez De Heredia. And she opens up, Maria Lopez opens up 5 or so bottles, vintage unknown because the labels have either fallen off or the mold's too thick on the bottles. And there's an incredible story with this. One of these bottles is one of not only the greatest wines I've ever had in my life, but also was one of the greatest wine experiences I've ever had in my life with Maria. And it was, now I can see it because the mold has died off. I'm looking at the bottle right now. It's been on my shelf. It's a 1968 Lopez De Heredia.
It's incredible.
Red, which we're drinking the 80 right now as well. This wine, well, that episode will go up on SOMM TV in probably a week after you hear this podcast, maybe 2 weeks at the most. So you'll get to see this whole scene. But this bottle was, I think, it's the kind of thing where you can have a really old Pinot quality where you're drinking something really feminine and soft, but acid that makes you salivate, but yet this underlying incredible fruit character that is balances it all out. And yet there's an earthiness with these wines that is not French, it's not Spanish, it's not Italian. I don't know.
It's Lopez.
It's Lopez. Yeah, it is. It speaks its own language. It's not Spanish or French. It's not Basque. It's all these things. And so this wine is a wine that, coupled with a woman who is an incredible visionary firecracker that is Maria Lopez. We spent the whole day with her. It was storming outside.
And you're just in the caves drinking all these random wines that you have no idea what the vintages are.
All right. Because unfortunately this podcast could go very long, so I'll take this really quick. Her father, I want to say this would have been in the early 80s, late 70s, was preparing a tasting for some important people. That's all I know. And so he stacked up a ton of wines in the corner of a very, very remote back room in their cellar. And there, as you know, it's a very labyrinthian place at Lopez De Heredia. All covered in mold. All the labels are gone. There's bottles all over the place. And so he set these wines up for a tasting, and then those people were unable to come. So they stayed there. And years later, he passed away.
Oh, wow.
Those bottles stayed. And so when we were talking to Maria Lopez, she said, I will open up some stuff for you. I was trying to get her to open up something, interesting or whatever for camera. And she just said, why don't I just start opening these bottles my father had prepared for a tasting until we find a good one.
Wow.
And so these bottles ranged from 11 all the way up till maybe 70. And so we didn't know. And this is the only one that had a partial label. And now I can see it's a 68. But that episode's coming. And it's interesting stuff. So that's my number 5.
That's great. I mean, I think that her wines, you said it perfectly. It's like Pinot Noir in terms of maybe color and elegance, and then the earthiness that just really you feel. And even in the 1980 here.
Oh, this wine is
like, you feel like you're in the cellar. You're at no other place but Lopez De Heredia, which is just, I mean, again, it's a sense of wine bringing you back to the place. I wish I was there at that tasting.
Oh my God,
super jealous.
Well, we have footage of it, so you
great. I'll be there on film by.
Well, you're in it, actually. Yeah.
Live vicariously. Okay, so maybe you should go first for the next wine then.
Okay, you want me to do my number 4?
Yeah, let's do the number 4.
Right, so my number 4 is a wine that is a little bit cheating. It's fortified. That's legal, right? Fortified wine's okay? Mm-hmm. All right, so this, people, if you saw SOMM 3, you know this wine. It was Mr. Spurrier's wine that changed his life, which is 1908 Coburn's Port, my boy. And he opened that wine at the table in Paris. And it was amongst giants of wine and personality. And Stephen is a very understated person. He's a very quiet, yet holds an entire room's presence without having to talk.
Right.
And I admire this man greatly. And it's not because of what he's accomplished. It's because of the person I got to know making the film, and I now know as a friend. And he opened this 1908 Coburn's. And for me, I kind of thought the age of it was, what a cool parlor trick for camera. What an interesting thing to have this really old. And he picked it. I didn't tell him what to pick. He got it directly from Coburn's. It stayed on the, in Portugal on that shelf until we opened it.
Incredible.
And it was absolutely miraculous. In fact, we had dinner with Fred, and Fred pulled us all. We were all at this Paris bistro after that. It was Fred, myself, Jackson, the cinematographer, Christina was there, our sound guy was there, John Adams, and Mike Ryan was there. And Fred said, all right, what was your favorite wine of the night? What was your favorite wine of the day? Let's be honest. Better not have been in those Brits.
The Fred boys.
Everybody one by one started saying what their favorite wine was. And, Jackson went first and he said, it was the 1908 port. And keep in mind, Fred brought a 68 Ridge out of a Magnum, which was it was the wine that sparked wine for him. And so you see his face like twitching.
Yeah.
And it gets to, starts going around the table and everyone's saying this port. And it gets to me, and I think I was the last person and held some sway because, whatever, I'm the guy with the slate. And I said the 1908 port, and you could see Fred wanted to throw his glass of Beaujolais, his on-tap Beaujolais at me. But the truth is, that 68 Ridge was perfect.
Right.
If it's not the best American red wine I've ever had, it's definitely in the top
Amongst
3.
the top, yeah.
Oh, my God. But this 1908 port sets a new standard for anything. Forget about fortified. Forget about anything. Forget even about its age. It was so elegantly together. All of the citrus flavors and the alcohol was perfectly balanced. And I mean, it was an amazing thing.
Did it taste like fortified wine? Because it's interesting. Like sometimes when I have old Madeira, I've had like 1863 Madeira, similar that it's a wine first, but I almost feel like it just has this intense flavor, but you don't get that. Some people don't like port, and the argument of young people is that port is just, it went out of fashion, which is why I love the movie, because I thought you're bringing things that were old and making them important again. And so I love that you brought the port, or he brought the port, but
Yeah, it means a lot.
it's incredible because when I've had not quite that old in port, but they don't really taste the same way. They're not boozy. They're not,
No.
fruity or nutty and intense. They're just, in a way, just like...
There was a very, I want to say almonds to this thing.
Yeah.
It had a nutty thing, but it also was very, there was fruit, but it came in the form of a citrus.
I like that.
Yeah, it was not in the form of like a berry or anything like that. And if you have any kind of ruby ports or anything, they're very...
Blackberry,
blackberry and raisiny kind of thing.
Yeah.
But stewed kind of plummy thing. It didn't have any of that. It was very citrus nut forward, but perfectly balanced, very light, almost looked like a white wine rather than a red wine, and I think you can see the color on camera. or like a darker rosé-ish kind of white wine. It was a very interesting wine. That's my number 4 for sure. And it is honestly, a lot of these, you can be really swayed by the situation.
Oh, yeah.
And this one, throw out the fact that we were in an incredible, iconic restaurant in Paris, throw out the company I was with, this wine, I could have had this wine in a bus stop in Detroit, Michigan at 7 p.m.
And been just
in the
as
snow,
happy.
and it would have been just as fun.
So that wine is about the wine for sure.
It was out of control, and it caught me with my pants down. I don't think I expected that. I thought it was how cool that I get to tell a history story on camera, and really ended up being, holy shit, this wine is really good.
Right.
That's kind of how it hit me.
Great.
So that's my number 4. What's your number 4?
So my number 4 is 99 Ravenous Les Clos. And I'll tell you this story. This is, I like for people to know that, sommeliers, master sommeliers are human, and we all grow and learn, and we don't know everything. And so for me, Ravenous is my deathbed wine. Right now, I think it is the producer that I love the most, the producer that I can't get enough of drinking. I love introducing people to Ravenous.
So Ravenous is a Chablis.
Ravenous
it's a Chardonnay.
It's a Chablis producer, but it is considered. I think if you pooled like a group of sommeliers and you said, "What's your favorite white wine?" or "What's your favorite wine in the world?" that most people would say some Ravenous, because it's in another level. But it is a Chablis producer. But I think the reason that I love it is because at the time I had no idea what Ravenous was. And so I'm living in Las Vegas. So I worked for a large restaurant group, and we were opening hotels and restaurants all over the country. And at the time, I was like 24 years old. And it was really funny because I was living in the MGM Grand. I was like in a hotel room for 9 months. And at the time, Raj Parr was living in the MGM Grand too. And he's running the restaurant Nob Hill and Sea Blue. And a really good friend of mine, Heather Branch, is running Tom Colicchio's Craft Steakhouse. So imagine 3 restaurants in the MGM Grand, and it was myself, Raj, and this woman, Heather. And we were all from other places. Like, we didn't live in Las Vegas. We only
sounds
went
very
there.
Las Vegas.
Yeah, we only went there to help open these restaurants. And so I have no idea, but my friend Heather worked for Larry Stone and worked with Raj, and they were all really good friends. And they said, Larry Stone's coming to the MGM tonight, and we have to pick something really special to open up for him. And so Heather's like, and it's me, Heather, and Raj, and she's like, I think we should open Ravenous. And I remember sitting there just like pretending.
And Larry Stone, you should say who Larry Stone is.
Oh, and Larry Stone is the godfather of master sommeliers. I mean, he is, he's Raj's mentor. He is so many people's mentors. But Larry Stone is
He was
Yoda?
in San Francisco.
San Francisco, the 5th floor, Rubicon.
Rubicon is how I know it.
Yeah. So anyway, Larry Stone.
And one of his wines was poured in SOMM 3.
Right.
Which you infamously call.
Right. No. We won't talk about that. The listeners can remember the quote about that wine, which.
Funeral home is not necessarily a bad term.
No. The thing that I said was that it was so extremely floral. And I mentioned as if you're walking through and all the flowers in a funeral home. But
Listen, I'm not going to make you relive that.
Okay,
I apologize.
I just
try to give reference to who Larry Stone is.
Larry Stone is.
And his wines are fantastic.
Fantastic.
They are fantastic Pinots up in Oregon.
Yeah, so amazing. So anyway, Larry Stone's coming to town, and Heather says, I'm going to open 99 Ravenous Les Clos. It's Grand Cru, one of the largest Grand Crus in Chablis. And I said, oh yeah. And I just remember faking it. Like, I knew what it was. And I swear, I was like not expecting a white wine. I was like, well, what is this going to be? Like, oh yeah, everyone's like, yeah, Ravenous. Oh, it's that white chocolate and mint, that signature. It's Ravenous. And I'm like, oh my God, how is a white chocolate and mint coming in? I had no idea what it was. And so forever, Ravenous becomes like my special occasion wine. It was actually my 3rd date with my husband when I opened not 99 Les Clos, but another bottle of wine. And he didn't know what Ravenous was either. So it was fun because I'd had a tough day at work, and I brought 2005, 2006. And it was like our 3rd date. And I opened this wine for him. I was cooking dinner. And I poured him a glass, and he was like, "Oh, this is so great. We have to get more of this." And I was like, "Yeah, no, that's probably impossible."
Yeah, you better work harder.
Yeah, but anyway, so Ravenous, I think, is a very special wine.
It's a game-changing wine for me in a number of ways, and I really wish you guys would stop talking about it because it just keeps getting more expensive.
But it's not expensive in France. Like it's not as expensive in France.
Not even close.
And it's just like on random wine lists in Beaune. We went to this restaurant in Marceau.
Even their Petit Chablis, you can't really get it here, but even there, that stuff is ridiculous. And they don't make it, a lot of it, so it just pretty much stays there, I think.
Right. Yeah, but I think it's just so special, though, especially when you don't know what it is. And the first time you try something, it's like something magical happens. These iconic producers that transcend the appellation, that they're not, okay, yes, it's Chablis, but it's not just Chablis, it's Ravenous. There are very few producers that you can blind taste and say, I know this producer.
This is
That's
right
one
to
of them.
who made it. Right.
There's no, I wouldn't say like there's no way I would miss it on a blind tasting, but I don't think I would ever get poured a glass of Ravenous and not say, oh, this is Ravenous.
Yeah.
Like it's that stuck in my, you know how John Trimbach says like, this will be in your memory, that line in
of course.
SOMM 2, obviously.
Yeah.
It's like that taste is just stuck in my memory. And every time I think about that memory, I smile, so.
Anyway,
that's Ravenous.
That's great.
I don't know why it was my fourth. It should be,
Well, see, that's the issue, too. Like, all of these can slide around.
Right, they can move around.
Yeah, okay, so my turn on 3?
Your third, yeah.
Okay. So I proposed to my wife in New Orleans, which is, I think, my favorite city in the world. I just love this town. I love it. It's the only real American city, in my opinion, because it is truly the only non-really American city.
Yeah.
And that is what defines America for me, is that all these things slam into each other. Mm-hmm. But the problem is people see New York and they go, oh, that's American. And that's why I think New Orleans is the most American city, because it's in your face, that they have a central square.
Yes.
They've got a church right there. They've got, they're on a river. They are on the ocean to some extent. It's just a place that feels very European.
That's true.
Versus the way a lot of American towns feel like, which are... So anyway, it's American because it's not.
Right.
And so I proposed to Christina there, and Christina and I make all of these films and all these projects together. And when I tricked her, she thought we were going down there for work, and I had been working for a company documenting some
So this is pre-SOMM you're talking about?
Pre-SOMM. I'm sure my wife is listening and probably can correct me on all this, but I believe this is pre-SOMM. We were peripherally shooting a PBS travel show together, and I tricked her into coming down to New Orleans thinking we were going to meet with business partners and this and that.
Right.
And so I proposed to her, and she was mad at me because she said she would have brought more clothes had she known that she was getting proposed to. But we drank a Chateau Simone rosé, which is from. This is a wine that is very interesting. It is a rosé from where you expect rosés to be found in France, but it's ageable.
Right.
And this was a 99, which at that time I want to say was, I don't even know how many years old.
Right.
That's, my wife's better with dates and times, and
Right.
I'll get it wrong anyway. You're over there signaling. How old is it?
10 years.
10 years.
That was 10 years old?
It was in 2009.
So it was a 10-year-old rosé when we got engaged.
So tell me about 10-year-old rosé, at least in your mind. And you're not in the wine business at the time, so
No.
does it age and how does it taste?
Okay, so this is a wine that I guess you're always at your best when you don't know what you don't know. And
true.
I didn't know what I didn't know, but I mean, I've now had this wine several times since, and I've had other vintages of Chateau Simone. They make a great red, by the way, as well. They make great whites. They're just a good producer. And so this particular wine was, when rosé ages from a good producer, and there are many rosés that can age. There really are. There are more than people give credit. And also, a lot of rosés, if stored properly, can shock you. In fact, tangentially, we open up in an episode of Verticals coming up about Ridge. We open up an 86 White Zinfandel from Ridge.
Oh, I love that.
It's one of the best wines, one of the most interesting for sure, if not best, I've had in a long time.
Yeah.
And that is, they don't make it the way you think of White Zin. It's totally different. And they don't make it anymore, obviously, but I digress. Back to this. It's got this kind of very strange cross with the things you expect to get in a rosé, strawberry and, kind of like a tart candy kind of thing, like
Right.
sweet tarts or something like that. But also it gets this caramely thing that starts to happen. And, as rosé oxidizes, it goes one of two ways. It goes bad.
Right, or flat and boring and have no acid.
Exactly. But this particular wine, for some reason, is able to be popped with it has a very bright acid when it's
Yeah.
young. I mean, you would know probably better than me, but I feel it has a strong acid. And,
Yeah.
But a lot to it. It's almost like it's a bigger rosé.
I feel like we need to make listeners drink rosé with age, because for a long time, even in our restaurants, people are like, "Oh, last vintage of rosé, you shouldn't be drinking that." But there are producers in regions like you're talking about in Provence and Bandol and places where the rosé gets better with age.
Lopez De Heredia.
Oh my God,
their
the
rosé,
rosés
if you
are
can
so
find it,
incredible. Yeah, I haven't seen them in the market in a long
they
time.
don't even
It's
release until they're 14 years old sometimes.
Right.
You can't get it. I mean, they're just...
Yeah, we used to pour rosé by the glass at Cork Buzz when we first opened from Lopez De Heredia, and it was like, and people, yeah, it was incredible. And they're like, "Oh, I want more of that rosé." But right now, I'm pouring 2010 Tiburon from Close to Bone by the glass.
Oh, interesting.
And
Okay.
it is incredible, like the salinity and that like orange clementine and the brininess that you find in aged rosé. I would imagine that Chateau Simon had that similar vibe. And the thing about that is like the application is so broad. You know, if you're moving on from richer whites, but you're not quite ready for reds, and all these tasting menus where you need, different color and flavor and taste. I mean, I think aged rosé is definitely, this is the newest trend, I think.
I like this a lot.
Yeah.
I don't want those to become really expensive, so we'll be careful. But I also think there's something interesting. The first step is you're better off when you don't know what you don't know. But then there's this stage where you know something and it's a secret, kind of, because even if you told people, they wouldn't listen. And I think the aged rosé goes in this camp where even if I told people aged rosé is great, they might go, and they won't even try it.
Right.
And there's a funny thing with aged rosé. It kind of reminds me of like the people saying like you cannot have red wine with fish. These rules that are...
Well, they're so dated.
Right, but it's also like somebody who says, here is a math equation, you have to solve it this way, and then someone else comes along, and there's somebody who grew up in India and they don't know anything about the rules of math, and they figured out a way to solve this problem that's completely a way somebody hasn't thought about.
Yeah.
And I feel like food and wine pairing is the exact same way. You will find somebody who doesn't know shit about wine, who will go, or no, they know less and they're just thinking differently.
Yeah.
And they will go, well, I disagree, I think, or they just pair some kind of light red with a fish and it goes great, and they're not thinking about you're not allowed.
Right.
And so the aged rosé thing falls into this camp with me where you can pair these kind of wines with foods you would never expect to pair rosé. It's not like it has to be with salad, it has to be with X or Y, or it has to be drank in the summer, because they take a thickness and a bigger body when they start to age. And they one thing about rosé is it's pretty naked, and young wine is often naked. The acidity's right up front. The fruit's here, and they're all separate.
Right.
In rosé, you don't get a chance to see what that would feel like if it melds together with age.
Right.
And so most rosés are not built to do it. But sometimes with these aged rosés, and you get a chance to have something that really unexpected, when it goes together.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, I think people, we'll keep it as our little secret. Anyone that's listening to this podcast will hear. But I mean, aged rosé is all the rage for me right now. It's like my favorite wines to drink.
It's like $30 a bottle.
I know.
$25 a bottle.
Yeah, I mean, even the most expensive of these things, like Tempier retail with age, it's $50, but,
right?
Or $60, maybe a little more, 80. But you think about Lopez De Heredia, Tondonia, 80. I mean, and we paid
$300 bottle.
$300, and then this is a value still. So.
Oh hell yeah, I would have bought.
So I think the best value is aged rosé. All right.
I like this. All right? So now we're at your number 3.
I'm at my number 3, and I think along the same vein, we should talk about 79 Cristal, because this is my birth year vintage. So one of the reasons.
This is some Jay-Z wine. I like this. Okay.
Yeah, I think Cristal has a bad rap because. Everyone thinks of Cristal as like you just said, Jay-Z and Roederer, Cristal. Oh, it's like, a wine for clubs and things like this. And well, first of all, I think Louis Roederer is one of the best champagne houses. And it's well known and well celebrated, especially Cristal. It's what it's known for. But it's still like a family-owned boutique champagne house. So yeah, I think Roederer Champagne is one of the best champagne houses. And what I love about it is, you can buy their Brut Premier, which is just their, least expensive entry-level non-vintage for $30 a bottle. Yeah. And I think Jean-Baptiste Lacaillon, as the chef de cave, is one of the most talented winemakers in Champagne. So we're drinking this 79 Cristal at Pebble Beach Food and Wine Festival, and now Pebble Beach Food and Wine Festival was one of the first places I went as a young sommelier. I met some of my greatest friends at this festival. There's all these celebrity chefs. They're all cooking dinners. You're overlooking like the most beautiful setting in
What's the Pirates Bay? No, what's it called? Help me out.
Pebble. Oh gosh,
Buccaneers Cove, something like that.
Yeah, I forget now. It's anyway, it's like that beautiful golf.
Yeah, Pebble Beach.
Pebble Beach, but why can't I think of this? Long day. Yeah. Well, anyway, Carmel. No, who cares? Anyway, so 79 Cristal. The tasting.
What are you opening right now? Because that's that audio.
So right now we're opening Domaine Rostand Côte Rôtie 2011.
All right, let's drink that.
So yeah, let's drink that. So 79 Cristal. The story is we're all sommeliers working this entire champagne dinner where all the wines are Cristal and they're all poured out of Magnum, and all of the Michelin-starred chefs and New York famous chefs are cooking different courses. So there's Jean-Georges and Eric Ripert, and each course is paired with Cristal. And the last course was Eric Ripert's doing like baby goat and serving 79 Cristal. And these wines are direct from the estate. They're so fresh, stored perfectly. Mm-hmm. And, the bubbles are the exact same that you would imagine if you just opened current vintage of Cristal.
Wow.
Just, I don't know. There's something about aging champagne as well that it's just...
Yeah, I love aged champagne. I'm a huge
incredible.
sucker.
Mushroom, a little bit of like golden apple and pear, but... so fresh on the finish. And so it's one of the best birthday vintage.
Champagne just has the acid, too, to like stay.
Really, stay forever.
Stay just... Even when it loses some of the characteristics, like they lose the effervescence, they still keep something else. Something else develops. So when you lose some character, some other character comes out. The 69 Ruinart from Into the Bottle was going to be on my list. I took it off last second. But man, was that if I had 6, that and maybe the Trimbach 62 Conseil would be on there. But I have no whites on my list. Anyways.
Yeah, so 79 Cristal. Okay,
Love
I think
it.
We're up to your...
Number 2.
Number 2.
All right, so my number 2 is this one is not in any of the films. This is a 1962 Nazolé Chianti Classico.
Got it.
Did I say that name right? Nazolé?
Yep, you did.
Okay. This is an interesting wine. When I was making SOMM 1, to say I don't know shit about wine now. So to say that
That's
I don't,
not true.
Well, but I mean, like in the grand scheme of wine, I don't know shit, and even in the medium scheme. And when I started SOMM, and it was just I have a hunch that Ian is interesting to follow. Is pretty much all I had.
Right.
I had this guy.
I thought it was Brian that you first started following.
Brian was a friend of mine. He was just a guy that I was friends with, and he was going through a very early stage, but Ian was, when I met Ian, I felt here's a guy who will kill himself to do something, and I will kill myself to make a film.
Right.
And I looked at this guy, and he looked at me, and we were like the Spider-Man meme where you're pointing at each other. It's like you're me, I'm you. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna do this. And so Ian and I kind of made this decision, like, I'll let you film it, but here's the deal: you have to become a master sommelier, and I have to finish the film. As long as we both do this shit,
then it's worth it.
Yeah. So in the process, though, I said to everybody, I'm like, I heard rumors of this guy, Fred Dame, and I had met him for a half a second, and Brian's like, Fred, if you can get Fred to say, then the court will allow you to film something.
Right.
So I was chasing this guy, Fred Dame, and he's blowing me off, and why wouldn't he? I had never made a movie. I'm just this guy from Cleveland, and, I had no money, and blah, blah, blah. So eventually Fred goes, fine, I will meet with you. My house is in South San Francisco. Come meet with me at my place, blah, blah, blah. So I go there. And I meet Ian Cobble because I just thought Ian knew Fred. I thought I'll invite Ian, and Ian lives in San Francisco. I think he was. So.
They didn't know each other at the time.
Well, they knew each other, but I wouldn't say they knew each other.
They weren't friends. They didn't hang out.
And so Jackson, the cinematographer of everything we've done, and myself and Ian Cobble go to Fred Dame's house, and Ian is like glistening.
Yeah,
He's
nervous.
Nervous as shit. And I'm like, are you okay? And his hands are all clammy. He's like, oh, I'm fine, it's fine. It's totally fine. It's just not every day you go to Fred Dame's house.
That's true.
You know how Ian talks when he's nervous.
Yeah.
If you see the movies, he's nervous the whole time. And he's talking really fast. And I'm like, God, I didn't really. So then I'm starting to get nervous. Like, man, I didn't really realize this was such a big deal.
Yeah.
I just want Fred to say, all right, fine. I'll give you a shot at it's not like I needed his permission to make the film, but I certainly needed an entry point.
Of course.
And Fred was the entry point. And so, anyways, first thing Fred did is he goes, there's a restaurant.
Restaurant.
There's a restaurant. There's a restaurant. And it's
Ladies and gentlemen.
He says there's a restaurant, and they discovered a couple cases of wine in the wall.
Oh, wow.
And I want to say it was like kind of by the wharf in San Francisco, like a touristy spot. And he said, why don't we open a couple of these, see if they're any good? So he brings Angelus, which I didn't know what that was. I had no idea. Now, Jackson has that bottle on his shelf. It was a 61, I believe, Angelus, and a 62 Nautilus. And he just opens these bottles. And there was another one, which was a Beaujolais, a Cru Beaujolais from 64.
Wow.
So that Cru Beaujolais,
how was that?
he hands it to Ian. And he says, Ian, you do the honors. You open this wine.
Oh, gosh.
Ian takes it, shaky, sweaty palms, and he dropped it, and it shattered all over Fred Dame's foot, all over the floor in Fred Dame's house.
Oh, my God.
Yep.
And Fred probably helped clean it up. I think that's
Fred was incredibly. Fred did the Fred like looked at him like
right.
Oh,
yeah, just to
you're done now. So
yeah.
I'm like he's gonna call
he
the cops.
Just moves his arms a little just to make
And I hope Ian's listening to this. He dropped the bottle, dropped a glass too. It all shattered, and it was. I mean, Ian was mortified, and Fred, absolutely was. Fred, if you know Fred, Fred is actually like a kitten. He's the nicest person.
I said that the other day. He's just like the biggest teddy bear. I remember calling him after my service exam in the master's and just being like, hey, I think I finally nailed it this time because, I famously took the master's four times, but the first 3 times it was service that kept getting me. And it was because I just didn't feel like I was good enough and I felt like intimidated and I just got in my own head. It really wasn't even that I was bad at service. But when I finally decided I was no longer gonna, get in my head and beat myself up, I called Fred and I was like, I think I really did well on service. And he was just great. Everything was like, yeah, pal, I know you got this. Tasting, I said the same thing. Like, no matter what I said, I could have been like, I messed up royally. And he would have been like, no, you got this, pal. And I feel like as big as he is, his hugs and his heart are bigger.
Yeah, he's the best.
So
he always says every once in a while he'll be like, I was just at an event, Jason, and I had to take 100 selfies, and that's your fault. And I just want you to know I don't appreciate that. So anyone listening to this podcast, when you see Fred Dame, take a selfie with him immediately, and then tag me so that I can repost it. And I love it when Fred's like, stop making people take selfies with me. He loves it, by the way, if you're listening.
Yeah.
So this Nautilus was the second bottle that got opened. And I'm holding it in my hand. It's probably one of the. I think it's the first bottle that I saved as an empty bottle to put on my shelf, and it was as a wine, very Pinot quality, very very light, very airy, very had this very fruity, very balanced, and astounding. I had been to Tuscany shooting this travel show, but not from a wine standpoint, but more from a luxury hotel standpoint. Prior to drinking this. And the next time I went back to Tuscany was during SOMM 1, and I had been there. Now I've been there, I don't even know how many times since on these movies, but this was a staggering wine that's equal parts the situation and the wine itself. And Fred, I remember walking out, and Fred put this bottle in my hand. He goes, you can't just walk out. You got to take this bottle. You loved it. I talked about it for 20, 30, 40 minutes about how I couldn't believe how good it was. And he sent Jackson with the Angelus, and all these bottles were perfect.
That's
except
crazy.
for poor Ian's. We'll never know.
We'll never know. We didn't lick the floor.
We'll never know if that
Cru Beaujolais.
Cru Beaujolais was good, but
that's incredible.
the story is worth it too. So
yeah, I really have to drink more Tuscan wine, and especially older Chianti Classico. I don't think we really think about it that much. We think about the
well, how much
wine
would this
regions.
bottle have been? A 62 Nautilus. This would have been what?
When they bought it, or you mean
this is just a regular table wine,
oh,
right?
yeah, Nautilus I feel like is a big producer that we don't really think of when we think about fine wine, but I mean, if it's aged, when it ages, even better. So I mean, probably, table wine, like you say, $20, $30.
Well, back then, a few bucks.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Nothing.
I mean, who knows?
It's like a step above the wicker basket.
A little bit more than a step above,
few steps
but not
I mean,
not
it's
much
not
at the time. It didn't aspire to be
it's not
around that
torta,
long. Exactly.
Okay, so what's your number 2?
So both are from the same vintage. So it's like I'm picking one versus the other. But I think I have to go with 89 Bajan Oprion.
Oh, wow.
So this is a really great story.
It's a cheap bottle.
Yeah, it's really cheap. I know. So this is the second label for Oprion. I think the most amazing part of this story is that I was getting ready to open Cork Buzz, and it was 2011, and it was a night before opening Cork Buzz, and we just had gone to this cellar we acquired from a friend of a friend, this incredible cellar of old wine, and no one else really wanted this cellar because there was like 1 bottle of this, 5 bottles of this, 6 bottles of this. So my uncle,
And why
Frank,
would they? You want higher
yeah, you
quantity?
couldn't call like Sotheby's or Zacky's and say,
Oh, right.
as a
You'd have
as
to
a
be a little
small
restaurant or something?
collector, well, I mean, it was like a guy that no one knew. It wasn't like this famous collector that had all these like perfect OWC original wood case bottle, cases. So it was
Is that
like,
what OWC stands for? Original wood case?
yes,
Wow, that's some insider shit right
you
there.
knew that, really?
I
OWC.
like hearing you say it.
Right, it's like a Barbie doll in its original box. It's so much more valuable. But at any rate, so my uncle, who's my business partner, his name is Frank. Frank's friend in Connecticut has this, cellar, apparently 900 bottles of wine, and I think it's so.
This cover tastes kind of funky, huh?
Yeah, funky but not corked.
Yeah.
You think it's corked?
No, I don't think it's corked at all.
Oh, I think it's like savory and lavender and olive and pepper and has that little bit of sweet manure, but
Sweet manure.
I don't think it's corked.
No, it's quite good.
Oh, okay, cool. The face, I wasn't sure.
No, it's got, sorry, I didn't mean to derail you, but the cover tastes great.
Well, the interesting thing is, when you come off Lopez, this feels, I think a lot of people think of Northern Rhone as like big, brooding, like full-bodied Syrah, but I don't ever feel that way. I feel like they're in the same vein of body and acid. So coming off the 80, this is younger, obviously, but it's in that same vein of body and I don't know, it's delicious. Anyway, Tangent Queen is me and Tangent King is you, so let's bring it back.
Okay, sorry.
I'll remind, no, I'm kidding, I don't care. So I'm just like, my brain is close to death, as Pascaline would say. It's just like I've been on so much that I can't even form sentences. But this particular cellar that I bought with my uncle, we're getting ready to open Cork Buzz in a year. And so we're like, oh, well, we'll need some old and rare wine. And a friend of his said, I have this collection in Connecticut. You should come look at it, and you should just give us a price. I'm getting divorced. I can't drink wine anymore, and I need to get this wine out of here in 2 days, 3 days. So Frank is like, let's rent a temperature-controlled U-Haul and drive to Connecticut. And if we think this cellar is worth it, we'll pack everything up ourselves. And we're really scrappy. I mean, it's not like we had a ton of money. We're opening a restaurant. And so we go in this cellar, and the guy's like a really funny, quirky guy, and I just basically took an inventory, quickly made up math in my head of what I thought the wine was worth. We wrote him a check, and we packed up everything and drove it off in a U-Haul. And we didn't have Cork Buzz at the time, so we unloaded this wine into my aunt's house in Long Island, and then fast forward 5 months later, Cork Buzz is opening. We bring all the wine, and now we have this sick wine by the glass list to open. Sometimes my friends make fun of me. They're like, really? You were selling 82 Bordeaux by the glass when you opened Cork Buzz, or 78 Mondavi? And I was like...
You got to get people in there, though.
I mean, yeah. And also, it's your name, and it's the first time you're opening a restaurant. So my first employee ever, she owns Bay Grape, Stevie Staciones.
Oh, yeah.
And she and I were getting ready last minute.
I spent some time with Stevie in Alto Adige in Italy.
I love her so much. She's my favorite.
She and her husband are
They're beautiful.
Great people.
So we're getting ready, finishing touches on the wine list, and we've been working nonstop. Cork Buzz is opening the following Monday. It's Friday night, and I'm like, we have to open something great. We have to get a bottle from the cellar, anything. We had, Mouton, Margaux, all of these great wines, and I'm like, I want to open 89 Aubryon. So we open this bottle, and the funny thing is about great wine, people say, what is the difference between a $500 bottle of wine and a $50 bottle? I can't tell. I call BS on that. The thing about this wine was we had it in our glass, and it was 4 hours before we even took the second or third or fourth sip. It's incredible. The decanter ended up lasting we worked till 2 in the morning, and we opened it at 9 o'clock at night, and the bottle was still there, half full. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that when something is so good and you smell it and you drink it and it lasts on your palate and you just keep tasting it, you forget you haven't just kept sipping it. For me, I can finish a bottle of wine in 20 minutes. But in this particular case, this is one of the wines that lasted hours. And it was just the memory of the last sip took you through to the next sip. This was incredible.
Oh, I love that.
And also Bordeaux is not fashionable, right? Among sommeliers, like who's like the champion of Bordeaux? I mean, there's the champion of Burgundy, right? They do La Palais.
I also think fundamentally, I'm not a sommelier, so I can say this. I think fundamentally the idea of a somm is to discover and show you things you don't know. So the problem with Bordeaux is it comes in as the I'm a blue chip, I am the standard, I am this.
Right.
So, but there are, you and I both know that there are things on the right bank and things on the left bank, and there are interesting things that blow people away that you don't expect. But you're right. I don't know who the champion of Bordeaux is.
Right. There's like Mardi Gala and there's a festival for Bordeaux, but everyone's talking about La Palais and now.
But Bordeaux doesn't really need hipster sommeliers in New York to go champion me.
No, it doesn't. But there's a lot more Bordeaux to sell than there is Burgundy.
Yes.
You can't rest on your laurels. You can't just say just because somebody's grandpa collected it that you can't. They have to be relevant again. And I guess what I'm saying is,
I've been asked numerous times, what's the most underrated region in the world? And there are many before what I'm about to say, but I often say right bank Bordeaux.
Yeah.
I think it is incredibly underrated for the price. What you can get on the right bank is out of control.
Right.
Especially some of the some and in lean years, some of the Cab Franc stuff is so incredible.
yeah.
I don't know. This is my opinion, but
Well, anyway, so
that's an astounding. That's your number 2.
So are we up to your number 1 or are we up to your number 2 still? How many more
I
do
think
you
I
have?
did my number 2.
Okay, great.
My number 2 was the 62 Knotzley.
Oh, great.
So I'm going number 1 right now?
Number 1, yeah.
All right. My number 1, and everybody who knows me or listens to anything knows exactly what I'm about to say. The 69 Chat Hermitage I had with Jean-Louis into the bottle. There's a mixture of... I would love to chalk this up to romance, and I would love to say, Jean-Louis' wife told me there's something, because she was the first person that I said, look, I'm going to try to get him to open up something crazy. Aaron, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, Aaron Schaff. I said, I'm going to try to get him to open up something crazy, interesting, and meaningful to him for this, because if it's not, the performance won't be great, and it won't be something that matters to him. And she said, basically did something to the effect of, do you know who my husband is? And I said, I know who he is. No, she goes, you ever seen the Jungle Book cartoon? I said, yeah. She said, my husband is the snake in the Jungle Book, where he can look you right in the eye, and all of a sudden, you're just with him. And you're swaying with him, and you're listening. And it's not, he is somebody who is just so transfixed with his own work and what his family has done that you become transfixed immediately into what he's doing.
Yeah.
And luckily, unlike the snake in Jungle Book, he's not going to eat you. He's going to give you great wine. So, but she said that, and I started thinking about that as a concept. And when I asked him, what would you open? He said, as casually as I would say, let me see what beer I have in the fridge. He said, why don't we do my birth year? Which, of course, there was no wine, because I was born in 68, and that was a disastrous year. We had no vintage, and there was no fruit. So 69 became my birth year. Why don't we open
adopted
that?
birth year.
Yeah. And so I said, okay. And I remember looking at Jackson, and John Adams is my sound guy, and we kind of...
Pinched yourself?
Well, we looked at each other like, okay. And so we're walking down into this cellar, which no one's ever filmed in. We're the first people ever.
I know. That's incredible.
And it's you kind of have these moments when you're making these films where you're present. This is going to be a really weird analogy, because I've had 2 children, and the first child you have, you think you're present when they're being born, but you're experiencing utter terror and delight and fear and magic.
You're out of body, right?
You're out of body. And that's how these wines, like the experience at DRC that I had in SOMM 2 and like the 69 Shop, were like. I'm not saying they are more important than my child. I'm just saying that the experience is similar in that it is a very out-of-body experience. So I can talk about what it felt like, but I can't remember exactly being in that moment.
Right.
And so he took us down to this cellar, and he's just casually going, here's this 69 Chat Hermitage, and here's what it was like, and here's what my birth year, and here's what my father, it feels like to take this thing over. And Columbus discovered America after this family started making wine, same family. And I'm standing in a cellar that he just casually goes, this whole part we walled off because the Nazis occupied this building. And we walled it off before they came, and luckily this whole cellar stayed, and all the wines in it stayed. And that's the kind of sentence like I would say to you, I go to Taco Bell on a Tuesday, and that's what he says,
Yeah.
which I don't go to Taco Bell, you know. But the point is, it's just casual conversation. And this wine, take all of what I just set out. Take the Nazis out, take the fact that we're in Hermitage, take away the fact that this wine is, unless you are a Russian gangster on the highest level you can get a hold of. Take away the fact that it never moved. Take away the fact that I'm surrounded by mold and one of the most prestigious French winemaking families in existence. Take it all away. That wine is the most stupendous, incredible, life-changing thing I've ever had in a glass. And every sip was like a case of other wine, and every single smell was like that, and it changed so much every 5 seconds that it was like, it would be like having 5 years worth of wine in a glass. And that's how I felt about that 69 Chop. That is my number one, and I will chase for the rest of my life
That experience or that feeling.
like the most glamorous aspect of a drug addict. I will chase that high forever. And I will probably never find it again. But it was that good.
Wow.
And so that's my goal in life of making wine films, is to let Jean-Louis Chave let
That's
me
a
back
good trick, by the way. You know, keep making wine films so you can keep drinking great wine.
I've been accused of that. I've been accused of that on Twitter numerous times,
Yeah.
that I make this to drink this stuff. And you know,
Well, listen, it's not a bad perk.
well, you know, maybe, but
I think that you bring people to these incredible places, and if they can't buy the wine, find the wine, drink the wine, even just like the littlest teeny taste of being there is so important. And I'm not just saying that because we're friends and because I just truly believe in SOMM and SOMM TV, but I feel sometimes chills when I think about what you've done for the wine industry and what you've done for me, not me personally, but my profession. The fact that random people come into Cork Buzz and are like, I've heard of SOMM. My dad was like, I know what a master sommelier is now, finally. And that's really special. And you know, I'm not a blowing smoke up people's ass type of girl, but so my final wine has a little
that means
bit.
a lot. That's I
Well,
just
it's
have to. I have to
true.
have a retort to that. Thank you very much. That
Yeah. Well, my final wine
that's
is
crazy.
is because I think I was looking at my list and I didn't have an order. I just had these special wines. And then as we were talking, I was like, oh, this is going to be the wine I end with. And it's 89 Trimbach Clos Saint Hune. And I was lucky enough to buy a bottle of the Vendange Tardive, the late harvest. And he made two different cuvées. This one is called, I hope I pronounce it right, but Orge Choix, or it's spelled like it kind of looks like Horse Choice. I remember it is. It's like HORSCX or CHOIX. So it was funny because there was this event that was hosted by Robert Mondavi, and it is probably still my favorite thing I've ever done in wine. And so Robert Mondavi, obviously a legend, an icon, and
You went to an event hosted by Robert Mondavi?
yeah, it was a
Okay.
toga party, actually. So
No.
Yes. So Robert Mondavi did this thing called the Sommelier Summit. He flew 50 sommeliers from all over the country.
When was this?
This was like in mid-2002, before Constellation bought it. So 2003, 2002.
Holy shit.
So he flies 50 of the top sommeliers from all over the country into Napa Valley, and he hosted everyone for a weekend, or 3 days. And it was like an event where you did different things. I mean, they brought you into the vineyards and you did like barrel rolling contests, and you went to dinners at world class or wineries, and they teamed you up with people. It's where I met Shelley Lindgren.
Yeah.
Lindgren
Oh my
is,
God, how much I love that girl.
I mean, if there was one woman in the wine industry that I think I would be, and I just adore her. It's
What
Shelley
an
Lindgren.
incredible chef she is too.
She's just like the owner / proprietor sommelier for A16 and SBQR and all these great restaurants in San Francisco. But I mean, this woman is like,
She's a force of nature.
she's force, and she's
Great cookbooks too, by the way. People
great
should buy them.
cookbooks, great mom, great friend, great entrepreneur, everything. But anyway, so Shelley and I met there. We were like just babies. But so Robert Mondavi flies all these sommeliers in to do the Sommelier Summit. But the first night, you have to bring a bottle of wine to share with the group. And you have to stand up and defend the bottle, or like talk about why you're so passionate about it. And of course, I think that Trimbach, it's a Riesling, they're close-in hewn. It's a single vineyard Riesling from Alsace.
We talk about it in Into the Bottle.
Yeah, it is the best dry Riesling site in the world.
So that was the white I removed from my list.
Yeah.
Oh,
good.
Well, the 62 that I had with John.
Oh, I'm glad.
John.
You would have
I'm glad
I'm doing 89, you're doing 62.
I know, that's why I'm not trying to talk.
Yeah, but I remember just being like this, like bright-eyed, and I'm still bright-eyed, I hope and think, but bright-eyed person just being like, this is Riesling, and I think it is the best dry Riesling site in the world. And the Trimbach family, they've been through so much, and parts of Alsace, they were German, they were French, and every world war, they changed hands. And so this particular wine is a late harvest wine. There was a lot of botrytis, and for this, horse choice. They picked it 2 weeks later than the other Vendange Tardive, and so there were very few bottles available. And I was just like sharing it with a group of sommeliers, just starting my career. And then when I saw Into the Bottle, and I saw Jean Trimbach on, in his vineyard with his son, talking about like, what was the vintage that they had? 62. And he was like, you will put this in your memory. And like, Jean Trimbach came to my restaurant like one of the first one of the first years I opened Cork Buzz, and he was in my restaurant with my staff, and I'm like, these people, they're people, but to me they're still, celebrities. And so that's my number one wine I've ever had. 89 Trimbach close-in hewn, Vendange Tardive. Yeah, but it was amazing. And what is it like old? Okay, so here's the thing about Trimbach close-in hewn. I have vintages right now on our list. I
had one by the glass last time I was at Cork
Buzz, yeah.
And I sat there and I worked on my next film, which I swear to God is going to be done someday, about the sea urchin divers.
Oh, I can't wait.
But I sat and I worked on some of the most difficult parts of that movie while I had a glass of close-in hewn by the glass at your restaurant.
Yeah, that's the thing we try to do, and being here has made me inspired to do more. But people need to try these wines. Like they need to experience like 100 wines before you die. You need to have Lopez De Heredia. You need to have Ravenous. You need to have Trimbach. You need to have, Old Chave. But young close-in hewn, it's not the same as close-in hewn with age, because it's only when it ages that you experience the vineyard and the site and Rosacker and how important it is. And anyway, I think it's the best dry Riesling site in the world, for sure.
I mean, with the limited knowledge,
and John, does it get more passionate than him?
No. And he's so here's the thing.
Oh, I love that man.
I mean this with utter love. Germans are funny.
Yeah.
And Alsatians will say all day long that they're French.
Right.
And they are. But they're funny like Germans,
yeah.
And they can't help it. And he is so goofy like a Frenchman, and yet serious like a German.
Yeah.
And there's comedy there, and I adore that man.
He's a character. I think that's my favorite part. Of the SOMM 2 movie. I think that was my favorite line. I remember just thinking about that line over and over again and being like, how many wines am I going to remember in my memory? And I always think about his accent and how beautiful he is. And yeah.
That whole family too.
Oh,
they're
God.
All great. All of them.
Yeah, I'm gonna go get some Trimbach close-in hewn and drink it tonight.
We should be drinking that right now. Now you make me want to have another bottle of wine.
Right.
Laura, I am very excited for people to see what torture I put you through. Mm-hmm. You did incredible work here in LA for what we filmed, and I can't wait for people to see it. And thank you so much for doing this. This was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun.
We may have to do this again because I think our wines will shift around.
Yeah,
change.
We should. We should do it next year and see if things change. But I'm so excited to be part of SOMM TV and the SOMM family. And, I think we're going to do great things in exposing people to wine and letting it be something that is attainable, even if it's just hearing about it or visualizing drinking it. I think it's just as important as actually doing it. So a lot cheaper. Sign up for SOMM TV and go to
Cork
DRC.
Buzz in New York City.
Yeah, come by.
Yeah.
We'll have some Trimbach by the glass.
I love that shit. Okay. Well,
all right.
Cheers. All right. Good stuff. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Really appreciate it. Please don't forget to go to sommtv.com. If you like what you see there, please tell everybody. I mean everybody. Stop random people on the street and tell them. And we will talk to you guys on the next episode.